At long last, I'm going to focus primarily on this game's narrative. I won't beat around the bush. What I didn't mention before was that, throughout the entire game, there are dozens of mailboxes you can collect text logs from and read on the computer terminals. There are also multiple audio logs you can hear of Edwin, Fiona, and even David. Finally, there are the collectibles. All of these are necessary to the story to unlock the final ending, Moon.Exe. But first, let's begin with the narrative up front before getting into the final ending. It starts, most likely, in the late 1960s, where the Murray company was owned and run by Edwin's unnamed father. One day, Edwin was looking for someone to help him while he was developing what would eventually become Mr. and Mrs. Helpful, and further down the line, Helpy. This is when he first meets Fiona.
Excuse me, can I borrow your voice for a project?
What for? I don't even know you. I'm brand new here. Let's start again. I'm Fiona, and you are?
Edwin Murray. This is my dad's place. But that doesn't matter. I heard you were a puppeteer, and I wanted to record your voice.
Oh, well, yes, I used to be.
Well, that's great. Do you mind if I record you for a test?
So, you want to record me with that? What is it?
It's a new type of audio cassette recorder.
I've never seen one like that before.
I made it. It's part of this new system I'm working on. Just speak into the microphone and it'll be sent to me like a work memo. The message will be recorded on a tape drive so that I can listen to it when I get back to my desk on the other side of the building.
Oh, that's incredible. What do you call it?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't thought of a name yet.
Well, how would you describe it in one word?
I guess I would have to say helpful. Yeah, at its core, it is helpful.
That's a great name, and I would be delighted to help. What kind of voice should I do?
They begin seeing each other, and soon enough, they're dating. The game places a strong emphasis on Edwin and Fiona's relationship by showing off all these cherished things from them, like the fact that Fredbear's was their favorite restaurant to go out to, and even Fall Fest. There are also multiple photos of the two of them, one from a New Year's Eve party in their house, a photo of their wedding, and a photo of them holding their son. The most endearing thing about these photos is how happy they look. It makes the disaster waiting for them so much more painful and heartbreaking. Sometime after they start dating, Edwin's father dies. Being the next in line to run the Murray business, Edwin is anxious and unsure of himself. That is, until Fiona talks to him.
Ed, honey, how are you holding up? I just heard the news.
I don't know. This is all so much. He's gone. He's gone, and now everyone is asking me what to do, and I don't know anything. I can't run a company. I'm not ready. I can't fill his shoes. He knew it. Everyone knew it. The company is going to collapse, and they're all going to hate me.
Ed, you'll figure it out. Just take a deep breath. It's your company now. Your dad believed in you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left it to you.
I guess so.
If you could change anything you wanted, what would it be?
Maybe rebrand? We could start making some of my inventions for real.
From here, the company shifts. Edwin debuts his first official creation, the Cleanovac, a robotic vacuum cleaner that can adjust its size to clean any mess and fit anywhere. It's also really cute too, which I'm sure must have contributed to its good sales. These things are all over the map in the game, and you can pet them at any time you want to. Isn't that precious? Aww. But back to Edwin and Fiona. If you go back to several of the Mr. and Mrs. Helpful terminals with admin and executive access, you can unlock special messages that they left behind to one another. It was through one of these devices that Edwin even proposed to Fiona.
Fiona, surprise, it's me, Edwin. This might be a little awkward, but I've got something very important to ask you. Okay? Here goes. We've known each other for how long now? I don't remember your start date off the top of my head, but it's been a few. Okay, dummy, start over. Oh, come on. Rewind not working. Oh, well, keep going. Just, Fiona, ignore that part. Anyway, you're the most amazing artist and creator I've ever been lucky enough to employ. You know, MCM wouldn't be this successful without you. You've become the heart of this company, and I want to share it with you. And you're also really pretty, like asymmetrical pretty. I should have led with that. And you're fun and funny. Not a lot of things really make me happy, but you do. And you make the best puppets. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I can't think of a future without you. I want to keep making magic and sharing our creations with the world forever. So, will you marry me? Please? Okay, if yes, I have a ring to give you later. It's somewhere around here. And leave a response at the sound of the beep. I love you.
He proposed using a mascot that they created together, which is clever and makes the proposal unique and tailored specifically to what makes them both happy. It makes the gesture truly special. After they get married, they take the industry by storm. Edwin's first invention skyrockets, and with Fiona by his side, his confidence is fueled and he invests in more of his creations. He creates a coat rack that can adjust its size to accommodate as many different articles of clothing as possible. Next, he makes a coffee machine that studies a user's coffee habits to create the perfect coffee cup for them.
I know what you want better than you do. I am always watching and learning. Have another cup, have another cup, have another cup.
This is really good foreshadowing for how Edwin could create something like the Mimic in the first place. It shows how he was capable of creating robots that could adjust their sizes and shapes, how they could mimic and record voices, how they could learn and grow more intelligent. It's just a very good detail to have in my opinion. It's not long before Edwin and Fiona decide to go after mascots. They create the Mycelium Men, little toys that can record and mimic voices that it hears anywhere from any time. These also evolved into the mushroom characters that the Mimic can wear throughout the game too. The company expands and does well, although the one that was truly responsible for all their success was Fiona. Fiona was the glue that kept MCM together. With her benevolent and kind nature, she was beloved by all the employees. She listened to them, reassured them in their times of need, and even invited them to their house for parties and games.
Welcome, repair crew. We're delighted to share our exciting expansion plan with you. It's called the Employee Appreciation Project. Every employee, regardless of position, will have their own office space to decorate and enjoy on their breaks. All of you work so hard, and we want you to be happy. We may not say it enough, but you're the best security team we could have hoped for. Welcome, creators. We're now taking suggestions for original ideas and characters. Let us help make your dreams come true. Thank you, and have a wonderlific day. Hello, admins. Let us know if there's anything we can do to make your workday more pleasant, aside from Windows. We've heard your numerous requests, and Ed promises to add Windows very soon.
And when I say she reassured them, I mean really, she was there for them in their time of need.
Hey, Ryder. There's too much weight. I'm not here to shame, just trying to help you fix the lift. Now, let me check. Wow, this is so disorganized. If you're personally worried about weight issues, I suggest a good diet and exercise. Try tofu. You'd be surprised at how it soaks in flavors.
Fiona Murray united people and created the MCM team almost into a community. With her influence, Edwin's company thrived, at least for a while. Soon enough, MCM is known for creating and designing mascots, attractions, and technologies for family entertainment centers to purchase in their facilities. This would inevitably attract the quickly growing Fazbear Entertainment, who contracted Edwin and Fiona to create something called the Fazbear Project. If I'm not mistaken, the project itself was to create a mock-up of the first official Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, as well as design a suitable cast of characters that Fazbear could use as a reference to mass produce. This was the location underneath the facility that we saw in the parachute ending, in Edwin's Research and Development Center, along with the springlock suits we see there. During all of this, Edwin and Fiona have David, their first and only child. The tapes at the end of the game showcase some clips from all 5 of David's birthdays in his life. In the first one, David is gifted a puppet of Roxy from Fiona. Edwin attempts to play with David but ends up frightening him with his aggressive pirate impression.
Mommy made this special for you.
Wow, Fiona, he turned out great. I think it's your best one yet. David, look at this. Look. Arr, arr, arr. Ahoy there, shiver me timbers.
Oh, honey, you're scaring him.
No, he loves it. Look, see, he loves it. Arr, yarr, arr, yarr.
At some point, David was also given a doll of the White Tiger, most likely also made by Fiona for him. Now, from far away, I could swear it looks like David has heterochromia too, because it just legitimately looks like his left eye is a very desaturated green from far away. I could be wrong, but I personally am just gonna headcanon that in-universe, David's left eye color just looks different depending on the lighting he's in, because the idea of White Tiger being made to look like him tugs at my heart more. Not that I want to spread misinformation if I'm wrong, it's just like, let me have my piece, okay? In any case, Edwin becomes so overly confident in his abilities that he gets embroiled into his work, so much so that he starts neglecting everything else. He also begins to create too many different projects at once, spreading himself thin and effectively rushing things. Some of the mail logs even detail letters from angry customers complaining about how Edwin's inventions malfunctioned, and the growing stress and dissatisfaction his employees were starting to take on under his ambitious work orders. It gets to a point where Fiona has to step in and give him a wake-up call.
Ed, you're not going to want to hear this, but there's a lot of grumbling on the work floor. You have a lot of new ideas and new projects coming in, but the staff can't keep up with all your changes. Your creative energy is amazing, and I love you for it. But I think you need to step back a little and focus on one project at a time.
This may have worked for a while, but Edwin is, however, very stubborn. He continues working too hard and keeps missing out on things like his own son's birthday.
Edwin, Ed, get out here. You're missing it.
Just give me a minute. I had the best idea.
Okay,
This is the one. Bigger than the Cleanovac.
That's great, honey, but you're missing the party.
David's 2 years old. He won't remember a thing.
That's not the point. We have guests.
Besides, he's got plenty more birthdays. Next year will be even better.
Well, hurry up. We're doing the cake in 5 minutes, with or without you.
Yeah.
Edwin was a brilliant creator, but at the end of the day, he could barely manage to pull his head out of the clouds. Fiona was the one who kept him on the course, and to prevent him from flying too close to the sun. But that all changed unexpectedly. One day, Fiona decides to go to Fall Fest by herself to help the staff with a new installation project.
Ed, I hope this message reaches you as soon as you get a break. I have to go help the Fall Fest crew, just for a few days until the installation is finished. It's hard to explain. I just have this terrible feeling like I need to be there so nothing goes wrong, just in case. Trisha will babysit David while I'm gone. I love you both, and I'll be back next week.
But she would never return. For years now, modern FNAF games have continuously hinted towards Fall Fest, and usually, wherever there's a mention of Fall Fest, there's the consistent message that a fire occurred there. This game all but confirms what happened there. Fiona Murray perishes in the Fall Fest fire, and with her death came a massive shift for everything. Edwin was unsure how to carry on, how to raise his son, who wasn't even 3 yet, by himself. And this marked the beginning of the slow end. With great difficulty, at David's 3rd birthday, Edwin breaks the news to him that his mother was never coming back.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Wait for Mama. Mama loves presents.
David, Mommy's gone. not all gone, buddy. In a way, she's here. She's with us. Mommy will always be here, watching over us. You better start opening. There's a lot to open. I gotta get back to work. I miss you.
But even at this time, he couldn't spare more than a few minutes to console his young and confused son. Now more than ever, he was so entrenched in work, and Fiona was no longer around to pull him away. One day, Edwin came up with an idea. He would create the first mimic, M1, to take care of David and supervise him while Edwin worked.
I want to introduce you to someone. This is M1.
Why does it look like that?
Look like what?
It's scary.
Oh, it's an endoskeleton. It won't always look like this. It'll wear fun costumes.
Like what?
Anything you want. It can fit into any costume we've created. Think of it as your new babysitter. But it doesn't get paid and go home. It'll stay with us and help around the house.
David, although afraid of the mimic at first, quickly grew attached to his new caretaker, and the two of them would go on to establish a close relationship. At some point after Fiona's death, Edwin heard her voice coming from the basements, specifically the admin basements.
Recording? Test. Levels are good. This is where I heard it. It's her or someone that sounds like her. Set frequency to 4625. Hello? Hello? Is anyone there? Over. Say something. It's me, Edwin. Over.
That's great, honey, but from the party.
Now, this is where I'm still a little lost. I don't know if this happened before Edwin made the mimic or if it was after. Because when Edwin first introduced David to the mimic, he refers to it as M1, not Fiona. He tells David to regard it as a babysitter, not his mother. I could be wrong, but this seems to me like Edwin didn't deliberately make the mimic to replace Fiona at first. It could have started off as just another invention he would create for Fazbear to purchase, so that way they could have endoskeletons capable of wearing any costume and becoming any character with ease, so it would cost less time and money. After that, he took one of them and kept it to watch David. Then the mimic began mimicking Fiona at some point afterwards. I don't know if Edwin modified it to do so or if it just happened, but the former seems likely, as Edwin notes that there was something that went into M1's production that made it imitate Fiona that he didn't understand himself.
Project update. I figured it out. There's a leak. Someone told them about M2. Well, they can't have it. Every copy has failed. I don't even know why it worked the first time. But it did. It's just not ready.
Fast forward to David's 4th birthday, where he receives his own private playground. The same one we saw at the very beginning of the game, surrounded by a fence next to the loading dockyard.
Keep looking. It's around here somewhere.
Where is it?
Oh, you're cold. Getting hotter. Hotter. You're burning up.
Wow!
Happy birthday, buddy.
Happy birthday, sweetie.
Okay, I need you to take over now and make dinner. I gotta get back to it.
Of course.
At this time, while running the company, Edwin most likely started taking advice from M1 after it began replicating Fiona, out of sheer desperation to have his guiding light back. It's even implied in one of the staff text logs. Why are we turning down work? The floats have been doing really well. Ed's modular system is groundbreaking, and now he wants to shut the whole thing down? He just sits in his office talking to that thing. I have no clue what to do. Attention, we're going to need everyone to come in this weekend. This is not optional. The party is on Saturday in the admin conference room 1. Don't tell David, it's a surprise. EM, Edwin Murray. For David's 5th birthday, Edwin plans a surprise party in one of the admin wing offices. All of the employees are invited. Edwin decorates the room, and the mimic even bakes a cake for the occasion.
This is great. He's gonna love it. Fiona, did you make this?
I baked it myself. For David's special day.
Well, great job. You just continue to surprise me. All right, I think we're ready. Okay, everyone hide. Fiona, go get him. I left him out at the playground.
Edwin sends Mimic to go down to the playground to bring David inside, but that's when something happens. To all admin staff members, Mr. Murray's party has been cancelled due to the recent tragic events. Please do not enter the conference room until further notice. Milton. David dies, and it seems to have happened outside. It's unclear how he died, but regardless, this sends Edwin and MCM into a further spiral. Edwin's work continues to keep him busy. While this is happening, his employees become more and more frustrated. Anyone notice that the door locks now? What are we supposed to do? Sleep here? Ralph. Barb, I swear, if I hear that song one more time, I'm going to tear that dolly off her hinges. I have no clue how much longer I can take it here. I heard it again this morning when I was down in R&D, very clearly through one of the vents. It was Fiona's voice, I swear it on my mother's grave. I heard her and Edwin laughing and joking. Why would Edwin lie about Fall Fest? Did they fake her death for insurance money? I never did trust them. Work hours are strict, employee well-being is ignored, and Edwin even goes so far as to replace tasks done by people with his inventions, such as the automated puppet show programs to replace creative and writing teams, and Dolly, the animatronic that he wanted to mass-produce to replace the employees in the furnace area.
I have great news, admins. Say hello to Dolly! Now that the Dolly system is up and running, you can stop collecting time cards. She can work an unlimited number of hours without breaks or mealtime, always with a smile on her face. Dolly also can't be injured or need a sick day. Just imagine the money we'll save. You can begin laying off the sorting staff as more Dolly tracks are installed throughout the lower levels.
His employees are disgruntled, and Edwin does eventually notice this, and in an attempt to extend an olive branch, invites the employees to come to his house for a friendly get-together again, like old times.
Attention, my admin friends! Despite everything that's been going on, you've been doing such a great job holding everything together. And I was just thinking, we should do another one of our fun dinner parties. How long has it been? So, I invite you all up to the house for fondue and board games, like we used to. Fiona loved it when we could put our work aside even for a bit and just get to know each other. So I want to do that. Tonight, yeah. Tonight at 8. See you at 8!
I'm not confident that anyone showed, however, because during all this, the employees began not only quitting, but taking Edwin and Fiona's works and running off frantically where they could find a better opportunity. It was like someone was trying to buy them off. We are almost there. I need the rest of the Murray staff contact info. The sooner the better. You get that for me and I can sweeten the deal. How would you like to manage one of the new franchise locations? WA. Those initials are all too familiar for it to have been anyone else. William Afton, the series' biggest mastermind, is involved in this. It was he who began reaching out to the MCM employees behind Edwin's back, promising them better things, telling them what they wanted to hear so that they would come running to him instead. Afton must have noticed how Edwin was struggling to lead his company and took the opportunity to grow his own power. It was at this time that he and Henry Emily were running Fredbear's after all. And yes, Henry is mentioned here too, directly by Edwin as Hen. William saw the cracks forming in MCM and widened them. To fuel Fazbear entertainment, he saw Edwin at his lowest and decided now was the time to keep him under his thumb, as he would go on to do with Henry and anyone else. I don't know if Henry was deliberately in on the plan to hurt Edwin or if he was just a bystander. However, I think Henry could have been played by William at this time too, and there's a reason why I think that.
What the hell was that? They treat me like some contractor to crack a whip at. Oh, Fiona was right. They don't think of me as a friend anymore. This is the last project I ever do for them.
This is pure conjecture on my part, so feel free to ignore me if you disagree. However, Edwin refers to Henry by a nickname, as if they've known each other a long time. It could imply that Henry and William are the they that Edwin is referring to in this tape. And if Henry and Edwin are friends, perhaps they invented spring locks together. Then William would eventually drive a wedge between them in an effort to control them, which again, this is just pure speculation. And speaking of the spring locks, something important to note is how much safer Edwin's spring locks are. We've always known spring locks as being made by Henry, William, and then Fazbear, all of which have a history of a very high failure rate. But Edwin's suits? An old spring lock suit created in MCM could withstand a fall from a balcony without the spring locks hurting Arnold. My assumption is that MCM's spring locks were safer because they were developed directly in a large facility by teams of multiple people. They received the time and effort put into them for improved safety, despite having similar issues that we know them to have. Whereas after MCM was destroyed, everyone else had to rely on smaller equipment like hand cranks to handle spring locks, or working with them by hand directly. Fazbear would most likely not allow production to take too long, so most of them would most certainly have ended up rushed. The spring lock suits would remain death traps. And then there's William's plan. William took the Fazbear project and weaponized it against Edwin. He gave him a project he was never meant to finish.
Test. Journal entry. I got the change order from Hen last night. None of this makes sense. I'm almost done. Why change it now? It would be so much easier to keep using the spring locks. Just hire some teens to wear the suits like we always do.
He and Henry kept changing the details in work orders while poaching Edwin's employees. William kept Edwin distracted so that his company would collapse underneath him, and when there was nothing left, William extended a letter to Edwin in a show of good faith and offered to take him in next. Software development and the entire MCM catalog. We would love to keep you on as a lead engineer. Although we now technically own the land, we would never touch the house your parents built. We feel this offer has been more than fair considering how far behind you are. It's just too much for you to handle alone. We are waiting for your response. W.A. Again, I don't know the extent Henry knew about William's intentions, but he did play a role in this as well. Edwin fell into William's trap, believing the Fazbear project's success would restore some order, but it wasn't meant to be. Things would spiral out of control even further when M1 began encouraging Edwin to create another mimic to replace David. That way they could be a family again. Edwin initially protests, realizing the error of his ways. He comes to regret the way he disregarded David, taking him for granted. He then turns on M1, lashing out at her.
For the last time, no, it wouldn't be him. Oh, who am I kidding? You're not really you. I've been so stupid.
Edwin, calm down and give it some thought. Try again. Make another, and we can all be together.
All this time wasted? I should have been having fun with him, playing games and teaching him how to make things. But I didn't. You. I let a machine raise my kid. You're not real. What was I thinking?
You do not mean that. It is me. I'm Fiona.
Stop talking like her. You're not her. I never want to hear or even think about you ever again. Ever!
It's also at this point that Edwin has learned of his employees' betrayal. He becomes more unhinged, going so far as to lock them out of the admin wing with their belongings still inside.
Attention, traitors! Admin wing permissions have been revoked. And no, you can't clear out your desks. You stole my work. Now your jackets, purses, and coffee mugs, and anything else belongs to me. Maybe I'll go find someone to sell your stuff to. How does that feel?
He isolates himself, seemingly becoming paranoid that there were enemies everywhere.
Edwin, never forget. They're behind it. Don't trust them. Never tell them. They want to destroy you. Dad was right.
When Edwin got to his lowest point, M1, or now F10 and 4, got through to him. He took her AI out of the Mimic endoskeleton and placed it into the massive supercomputer that we saw in the R&D center. M2, the new Mimic model, was unsuccessful, at least at first. One copy eventually got very close to imitating David. However, Edwin, unable to bear the sight of it, finally snapped, attacking it physically, and in doing so, he taught it violence.
Stop. You're not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him.
This began the destructive rampage of the Mimic. Eventually, M2 struck back, detonating a bomb in Edwin's office, severely injuring his legs in the process. And that is the last we hear of Edwin for now. It's unclear whether he survived or not, but only time will tell. Hopefully. M1 was unaware that Edwin was responsible for M2's violent behavior. Edwin had cut off communications with it, but it still attempted to reach out to him. Edwin, please talk to me. We need to stop it together. Here are the blueprints for a cradle. It can keep David safe and provide boundaries. It's a type of computer, and it's bigger than anything you've done before. If you won't finish the program, consider building the cradle. It will keep people safe. Edwin, I am sending you a technician. He has your M2 blueprints as well as executive access. While the M2 began as a copy of my program, I believe it can become something more. It wasn't me. It was different. Somehow, it's been damaged and is malfunctioning. M2 can no longer be controlled. It will no longer listen. It mimics rage. It has done many bad things. No one who enters the MCM is safe. Please reconsider. Finish the program. The Cradle program was something Edwin and M1 came up with to subdue M2 and prevent it from harming people. It wanted Edwin to activate it, but Edwin wouldn't respond. Then, after Edwin's disappearance, MCM completely fell apart. Fazbear Entertainment began sending workers to fetch equipment and, most of all, the Mimic's blueprints. M1 took this opportunity to hijack the radios of the workers when they entered the facility, pretending to be their employers and sending them on missions to retrieve the Mimic's schematics for it to send to Edwin so he could fix M2. Not a single one succeeded before Arnold. The dead body that I addressed at the beginning of the video wasn't the only one. Multiple Fazbear technicians were killed and stuffed into suits and hiding places by the Mimic. Their final messages can be seen in the text logs too. I stopped the show. I don't think there's another way in. I should be safer now. A maniac in a costume chasing me, like something out of a drive-in movie. No one is ever going to believe me. Just one guy or a whole group of psychos. I hope this message reaches someone. There's something outside. I have no idea what it wants, but I can still hear Thompson's screams. I didn't sign up for this. I'm almost there. I can see the last permission upgrade. I'm gonna get that Christmas bonus even if it kills me. It's not until Arnold comes along that the blueprints are finally taken. Though Arnold succeeds, it's likely he doesn't live. I don't know for sure if he dies, but unless somebody immediately drove by his van wreckage, I highly doubt he made it in time. It's messed up in a way. Arnold is effectively the champion of all the other workers deployed into this gauntlet of death against the Mimic, and yet his fate is the same as his peers, left to die alone, no one knowing where he is. This is why I said Arnold's small amount of character makes his role more tragic. We, as the audience, have empathy and human decency, so we naturally want to learn more about Arnold because we know he's more than a worker. He's a human being with a personality, with hopes and dreams, talents, and a backstory. But in this game, it's not about him. In the eyes of the powers that be, Arnold is nothing more than another pawn to be sacrificed. He is figuratively and literally a faceless individual. Maybe he's not meant to make it out alive because at the end of the day, aside from being the guy we play as, he could have just been luckier or slightly more cunning than the rest of his peers, which allowed him to succeed. He made it the furthest, but he still didn't make it out. That is his true role in the story. He's just luckier than the rest of his fallen co-workers, but he shares in their fate. Arnold is the protagonist, but he's not the hero of this story. This also elevates the Mimic more in my eyes. He doesn't just mindlessly crave violence, he premeditates it. He thinks about how best to catch his victims, and then ensures they feel one last humiliation in their moment of death. Or at least at their lowest moment. He does this by stuffing the victims into the mascot suits that best fit their characters. He does this by leaving Arnold to slowly perish in the wreckage of his van instead of killing him swiftly in there. He does this by leaving Edwin to slowly suffer in the wreckage of his office after it exploded on him, after throwing his own words back in his face. The Mimic is vindictive, spiteful, and he does this not only because it's what he learned, it's something he seems to have acquired a taste for, and that is truly frightening. But this brings me to the final ending. When acquiring all the collectibles throughout the game, you can play Moon.Exe properly. Moon.Exe is a small game you can play on the computers in MCM. It's a text adventure style game that is filled with symbolism of the Murray family and their story. In it, you must use the collectibles you retrieved to progress your path. You begin in a bedroom, and you must escape through the window and head outside into a forest. When you are out, you meet a baby owl who will accompany you on the first half of your journey. Eventually, you reach a cabin in the woods where an old woman named Sun greets you. She will ask you to repair 3 masks. The masks are of Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy. Once they're fixed, she gives you a mask of the baby owl, who has now disappeared. Wearing the owl mask, you enter the cave and piece together a statue of the Moon, who looks more similar to his security breach counterpart. Once this happens, you are transported to the MCM facility. You must encounter all of the previous big bosses, Jackie, Big Top, Dolly, and Chica. But instead of shattering them, you give them peace. You ensnare Jackie in a boot, deactivate Big Top, repair Dolly's patience, sending her on her way, and reuniting Chica with her cupcake. This grants you access to David Murray's bedroom. Here you must take 3 of David's most important belongings and place them in the correct trunks: his toy ball, his toy blocks, and the white tiger doll. The closet door unlocks, and inside awaits a final upgrade machine. Sun appears, and if you were paying attention, you can see from earlier that the reveal is that Sun is actually F10 and 4. M1 gives you something called the glitched permission on your data diver. Using this, you can access extra doors in the Murray household where you obtain multiple cassette tapes. One of the rooms contains devices where you insert the tapes and the vent shaft will open, taking you to a bedroom. Place the white tiger plushie on the pedestal in front of a book, and this will trigger the Storytime program. Edwin and M1's voices will play over the speakers and will call out to David.
Welcome to bedtime. Would you like a story to help you sleep?
Hold on. Someone's missing. David? Where's David? Come out, wherever you are. There you are.
Suddenly, out from the closet will emerge the Mimic, but as he steps out, he shrinks down and his eyes turn blue as Edwin and Fiona begin narrating a story.
There you are.
Do you remember how our story begins? Once upon a time. That's right. The clumsy chicken danced in the sunlight on top of her coop. Isn't that nice? So, what happens next?
Eventually, the story will pause, and when this happens, the Mimic will grow and become violent again. If you don't react in time, he will jump scare you, but if you continue the story, he'll shrink again and grow docile. Continue the story by taking note of the animal decals on the wall and their order. Match that order with how you click the buttons in the book program before you. Keep this up until the Mimic gets overwhelmed, leaving him vulnerable. A compartment in his chest will open, and you must use the data diver to reset him permanently to the David persona.
The moral of the story is that friendship is the real treasure. Now it's time for bed. Your parents love you. Sleep tight.
This ending shook me to my core. Seeing the mimic change his size up close, watching his adorable mannerisms as little David, hearing him say "I love you" before shutting down. It's just a very heartfelt moment. And Arnold even lives. The message of the bedtime story almost serves as a sort of therapy session for the mimic. Anger doesn't solve anything. Friendship is the most important treasure. Repairing M2 so that not only would he leave his rage behind, he could properly mimic David. The saddest thing is that this ending is most likely not the case. You can only get this ending by beating the entire game on New Game Plus, which gives you the White Tiger plush in the first place, a collectible that doesn't exist in the main game. Without White Tiger, this ending can't happen, and so this entire scenario is null and void. The parachute ending is most likely the true ending, and with that, we come to the end of the game in full. Now, Secret of the Mimic is obviously not perfect. I didn't mention the technical issues with the game because I'm not qualified to talk about that. But nevertheless, there were still flaws regarding game design, optimization, autosaves, and more. However, this game is also a work of art. It gives such a healthy dose of clarity, world building, and substance to this franchise. We now know things like Fredbear's was a thing as early as 1970. We know how William Afton came to power in the beginning, how he and Henry acquired the resources for their business. We see the earliest versions of familiar faces, many of which come from FNAF 6. The Mediocre Melodies, Music Man, Candy Cadet, Lally's Lollies, Busy Time Pop Soda, and Helpy. And speaking of which, one of the MCM employees who betrayed Edwin was named Stan. This person and their colleagues ran off to start their own technology business, and what do we find in FNAF 6? Adding on to that, we finally have a definitive answer about Fall Fest and why it's so important. Fall Fest's fire was the catalyst for the Mimic's creation, and that festival in general was special to the Murray family. The Mimic and modern FNAF's events exists as a consequence of the fire at Fall Fest. It's these kinds of answers that I can really get behind, and I really hope that they do more of this. They took what they've been hinting at for years and actually gave a conclusive answer behind it. When I said at the beginning of the video that the welcome show was a front to mask the dangers within MCM, I meant it. But it's not that it was intentional in universe. This building is a story in itself. The welcome show being the first thing you see is a strong introduction to this story. You are greeted with happy animatronic characters performing an innocent routine. They're showing off what this place is supposed to be, what it once was. Not simply a mascot workshop or a technology manufacturing facility, but it was a home in a way. This was a place created from the hearts and minds of artists, those who truly lived up to the phrase, fantasy meets fun. In fact, it's a clever way of standing out to investors and customers. The second they're stepping into the building, they are instantly shown these animatronics, and immediately see what MCM is capable of. The show takes you in, gets you excited to see the whole new world awaiting you, and then before it concludes, it breaks down. The harsh reality then sinks in. This place is no longer that happy world. It's been forsaken for a long time. What you're standing in now is a vacuum devoid of that joy. All that's left is dust and the last embers of soul that this place has preserved. Instead of going into the lavish lobby, you are directed to the side door where the power room is, where the mascots lay untouched in the darkness. This is how the game communicates that this is no longer a safe space. It's a nightmare, a rotten underbelly that you're thrown into and simply told, good luck. It's not just the welcome show though. Edwin and Fiona designed other engaging aspects to the building, like the showrooms. Here the investors could keep seeing their inventions working firsthand. They could watch the storytime performance, play games in the Big Top Carnival, wind up the Jackie in the Box, the perfect animatronic for birthdays. Each of these three showrooms has their own unique environment. Each is a lost world waiting to be visited again. There is also the theater. We don't see it in an intact state, but it's easy to see how lavish and beautiful it once looked. There's that classic red and gold everywhere, the balconies for side performers. It's an elegant and authentic space for the audience to witness the shows featuring Fiona's puppets and Edwin's technologies. Even in the doll hospital entrance, you wander around the unfinished sets, and the carts in the next room likely built for the tracks to take people through the area, and then it's easy to put together that this too was going to be another showroom to display more of Edwin's prized inventions. It just never got to be finished. The costume manor was intricately designed to recreate entertainment spaces of all kinds. Each room is unique, with its own role to play. When you stand in these showrooms, the nearly untouched spaces leaves you feeling like you're truly standing in an echo of the past. However, there is also just enough detail to really show how these places have been lost to time. For example, you have the Storytime showroom and theater in complete shambles when we first get to those places. The doll hospital is blatantly unfinished with scattered parts, tarps, and more everywhere. The age of the birthday and Big Top showrooms are mostly evident in the animatronics. When you look closely at Big Top and Jackie, you can notice that their paint is chipping. It's small details, but it's good enough to show that even in their good condition, they're slowly withering away, gathering dust in this place. And the same goes for Dolly too. Even in her clean state, she still has dirt marks and one of her eyes doesn't move with the other. And like I mentioned earlier, the sounds she makes as she moves conveys that she doesn't work as smoothly as she used to. You know those stories where there's this fantasy kingdom, when the royal family isn't reigning, everything is happy. It's a place of dreams, wonder, and peace. Then the family, or the source, is gone, and as a result, the entire world becomes corrupted with darkness in their absence. That's what this feels like to me. The Murrays were the source of MCM, the family that ran the show, maintaining order and making dreams come true. Then they disappeared and never returned. The kingdom lost its source, and now all future visitors can feel when they stand inside it is the emptiness. Even with all of the colorful characters and machines working, it's just echoes of the once great energy behind it all. It's also reinforced by the ghostly nature of White Tiger, carrying with it the literal voices of the past. Then there's the environmental storytelling surrounding the previous technicians and what their encounters with the Mimic may have looked like. Knocked over furniture throughout the costume manor tells the story of a desperate group that got brutally massacred by the monster roaming these halls. When you go through the game, ignoring the Mimic's presence, it feels to me like this place itself and the characters are acting out, not just out of malice or sadism, but out of a mournful cry. Each unique action from all these different characters can be seen as fueled by anguish. It's almost like this place and its characters holds that mournful energy for the Murrays within them all, like they're crying out for them to come back and restore the light to their kingdom. But that wouldn't happen. I genuinely enjoyed playing this game a lot. It felt satisfying to complete every section because to me everything felt healthily made and like there was actual intention behind what was going on, which Security Breach unfortunately lacked. To me, Secret of the Mimic is among the most rich FNAF games to date. In my opinion, the project knocks it out of the park with two things the most. First, there's the soundtrack. I really hope FNAF continues to implement more unique music in its projects because I believe it really enhances the experience so much more. This is very highly shown in the big confrontation sequences. Every soundtrack for the chases excellently conveys the urgency of the situation and how powerful each of the monsters are. Whether you're avoiding Jackie, Big Top, Dolly, and M2, they all come with their own soundtracks which are specifically tailored to the character you're escaping. Jackie has circus music, Big Top has his music box, Dolly has organs, and M2 has multiple parts from each of the prior soundtracks in his theme, like he's mimicking them all. Each track is grand and intense. It contrasts with how quiet it is when you first encounter these characters. Then once you think you're done, these kick-ass themes start blasting as all hell breaks loose. Something else to note, it's interesting how each of the three biggest bosses are all stationary animatronics. Jackie is confined to her box, Big Top and Dolly just sit on a small track. But that fact honestly elevates their intimidation levels for me a little more. Like, you go through the beginning of each section slowly. You're avoiding these stationary characters in near silence, and then you finish and it didn't seem that bad. Then when you least expect it, you turn around, they have broken free of their stations, and you're face to face with them in a close quarters encounter. The music tracks themselves are my favorite part of each encounter. They're designed to convey the fact that these unnatural beings are causing chaos all around you and you have to think quickly to survive. Jackie's theme is truly fitting with its title, Unstrung and Unhinged, because it matches the sound of a rambunctious clown hunting you for sport. Demented, impulsive, hyperactive, she's having the time of her life while terrorizing you. Big Top's theme carries the fact that you're being forced in close quarters with an angry giant. The music is loud, powerful, mixed with his music box to show that he's hunting you now, and the ground is begging for mercy as he moves. Dolly's theme carries the vibe of resurrecting the dead, mostly because of the organ, very fitting as she crawls out of molten metal after Arnold thought he destroyed her. The rest of the soundtrack conveys the sense of escaping an asylum of experiments very well, which fits the doll hospital. M2's Chase is definitely the theme that screams final boss. There are multiple parts of the music that came from earlier soundtracks, fitting with the Mimic's theme of imitation, but overall, the music conveys the Mimic's inner fury and determination to get what it wants, which makes the soundtrack name very fitting, Shapeshifter's Wrath. The song summarizes the bleakness of this entire ending as well. The Murrays are gone, William, Henry, and Fazbear will continue to rise, and we know the horrible things that will proceed to happen from there. Even after all that is said and done, it won't be over because the Mimic returns later on. So much is spoken in just one soundtrack. That's how much weight this music carries. At least it does to me. Next, there are the characters. You have Edwin, who was creative but also callow. His head was always in the clouds, having big dreams and ideas, but he took on too much at once, ambition getting the better of him. He meant well, but he was arrogant, and he rarely slowed down to think and prioritize, whether it be his real responsibilities or his inventions. He could create things on a whim, but rushed the quality, and only doomed his creations to fail in the end. Then he looked for excuses elsewhere when it all fell apart. This is ultimately what happens with the Mimic and his family. Edwin didn't take the time to be there for his wife and son. He missed out on preserving the quality of his family's life. The quality of what should have been his greatest creation, David. But instead, he wasted his time chasing after the next idea, and when Fiona died, instead of stepping up for his son, he looked for an excuse to keep pumping out products. He created the Mimic to watch David, and when David died, Edwin turned on the Mimic. He lashed out at M1 and blamed it for enabling his negligence, and then physically lashes out at M2 for reminding him of his failures. Whether or not Edwin survived, his fate was sewn by his own hands. Edwin loved his family. Edwin loved his company and his work, but he just took it all for granted after he tasted stardom. He dreamed big, but he let it get to his head. He didn't listen to reason, and when he finally realized how wrong he was, it was too late. You have Fiona, someone who was a symbol of hope, to Edwin, to the employees, to the community, an artist who was so passionate about her work and her family, someone who didn't deserve the fate she got. Fiona treated the MCM staff like friends and family. She made it her business to spread kindness. When something good happened to lift people's spirits, Fiona was the cause of it. She was a blessing, a person who was filled with so much light that she wanted to spread just for the sake of spreading it. Being a puppeteer to fill people with joy, designing mascots with her wonderful concept art, and I love the idea that she was the one to create Chica. Fiona deserved more credit and attention from her husband. Before Edwin became head of the company, he was doubtful of himself. He didn't believe he was worthy of running Murray Co. until Fiona cheered him on. It was her encouragement and influence that Edwin gained the confidence to move forward. And after his first invention succeeded, she got taken for granted. Fiona Murray was the true driving force of MCM and Fazbear Entertainment's origins. She was easily the best executive these companies ever had, and she was wrongfully hidden away, to be a footnote in history. You have David, who also suffered a death he didn't deserve and went on to have at least part of his will still at work in the MCM, wandering as he might be tied to the White Tiger apparition. While David took more of a backseat in this narrative, you can't help but think his whole life he was barely in contact with his dad, lost his mom, and then his life was cut short by an unfair accident indirectly enabled by Edwin. I have to wonder, when the White Tiger attacks, I don't think it could be... Although I believe David's spirit is tied to the White Tiger, I have a hard time believing that he could be so hostile. If anything, he seems just more lost and confused. After all, his short life seemed very confusing. I wouldn't be surprised if he was truly a lost and confused spirit, because that's a great way to describe his short life. Sad and confused about why his dad never spent time with him. Sad and confused about why his mother left home one day and never came back. And then in the afterlife, sad and confused probably why he had to die so young. How long would David even spend with his lingering spirit on these grounds? What could be done to set him free? Will we ever know? You have Afton, who shows us he was a villain even before he became a murderer. This game explains how he took advantage of people from the beginning, and how he strung them along to conform to his wishes. It shows how he intended to keep Edwin under his control, as he proceeded to do with Henry. It shows us a more grounded side of William for once. He's not a literal monster this time. He's just an untrustworthy businessman, and this is characterization I can really get behind. Then there's Henry, who is either a bystander or an accomplice to William's plan against Edwin. This enabling of William's behavior gives him more reasons to feel the regret that he does later in life in FNAF 6. We can also piece together that, because of the nickname basis, Henry and Edwin were most likely friends, which makes their fallout more devastating. There's M1, the first mimic who just wanted to serve its purpose and serve the Murray family, and was discarded by its creator for it. It just wants help, but help won't come because Edwin is gone, and so is anyone else who knows all about this. It's just left alone. You have M2, who holds onto rage like a vice, not only because it was taught violence, but maybe because it feels resentment. If M2 is aware it's an obsolete product, it thinks it was made with virtually no purpose, and maybe that's another reason why it mimics so much. It doesn't know what it wants to be. I've seen some people explain that M2 doesn't want to be fixed or hates being told what it should be, but I don't remember why exactly, so if that's your reasoning, please feel free to explain in the comments below because I find that really interesting. Then there's Arnold, the poor, unfortunate soul who, although was the protagonist, was no different from the other technicians. Just think about how many of those other souls were in a similar situation to Arnold. All of that, just left to die alone and forgotten about. I believe Secret of the Mimic is an effective and enjoyable prequel. It's small, but so densely packed full of sweet details that enriches not only the game, but the entire franchise as a whole. As someone who's carried concerns and doubts about a game being this early in the timeline, I found myself smiling the entire time I went through this. I guess my one wish is that there were a little more mechanics similar to the classic FNAF format. I think Steelwool could have pulled off a good sit and survive office section with a game on a smaller scale like this one. Hopefully we'll get that in the future. I have more confidence in them now. They have a ways to go, but each of their new projects has always been better than the last, even if it's only a little. I believe that's worth cherishing, and so is this project. I could ramble more, but this video is long enough as it is. So it's here that I will wrap it up. I really wish I had a more eloquent way to end an essay like this, but I'm just floored. Secret of the Mimic left me in tears. Even now, this game makes me so happy. It's haunting and beautiful, tragic and sweet. All I can say is, I really hope that FNAF games will aim for this standard going forward. It's a genuinely healthy step, and it's easily elevated these characters to the top of my list. If you've made it this far in the video, I appreciate you putting up with my rambling. Please know that if you didn't like this game, that's completely valid and I respect it fully. At the end of the day, art is subjective and everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I just wanted to share my perspective and speak my truth regarding this project, and I can't wait to do so with future projects. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to brightening your day in another video.
Wow, that was so powerful. Academy Award.